So this is my final design. I made kind of a big pivot because I was making like an ultralight tripod with carbon fiber, and I was going to machine this thing. But I came back from spring break and talked to people in the machine shop, and they were basically like, it's all booked up for like senior design for the next, like, until this was due. So I'm like, well, I won't actually be able to make my thing. And so this was a project that I was thinking about for another class, and I sort of like swapped the two projects. I like started doing this one for this class and my tripod for my form class. So it actually worked out really nicely. And so, yeah, so this is a climbing rope chair. And it worked out really nice for this class because I got to like apply a lot of the aesthetics for like chairs that we got to talk about. Climbing ropes are just like, they wear out a bunch. And so like, well, not a bunch, but like if you climb long enough on it and take enough falls on it, it's no longer safe to climb on. Like you don't want to keep falling on it. And so I have like 3 ropes that I've gone through that have, just like retired. And so I wanted to do something with them. So this is sort of like an extension of the upcycling project. Oops. And so here's my final design that I made. And it ended up being way bigger than I expected. And so this actually took like 2 ropes to weave it. But yeah, I wanted to go for sort of like a mid-century modern futurism sort of aesthetic. Like I wanted these curves to be very like accentuated, and then I wanted the like straight lines to sort of bend between them, so that you have like it's made out of like all straight lines, but it looks like it's like these doubly curved surfaces that are sort of like intersecting each other. And so I was inspired by this chair that I found online that somebody made. Her name was Laura Cowardine. And I liked how like this part of it, how they like intersect, and they like, it looks like there's these 2 surfaces going through each other, but it's really just like the ropes passing by. And also when you sit on it, like that all like deforms. And because like that's part of like the climbing ropes are like dynamic, they're meant to stretch. And so like when you sit on it, it'll like deform to like your body. So I drew up a couple sketches and like tried to figure out how like that chair was done, but I also wanted to make it more my aesthetic with like having these curved boundary curves to it. So like these curves would be in opposite directions, so that this would like change curvature halfway through. So I went to Rhino and started modeling this, and I made this this super elaborate like grasshopper thing that let me like so I just drew the 4 curves, and this basically constructed all the rest of the ropes and geometry in it, so I could like mess with the 4 curves and see what shape I wanted it to look like. And so then I ended up with all of these different variants, and I ended up going with this one because originally I wanted to make it all out of metal and have like a really clean design like that, but I realized that like welding this or making like machining little joints and things would just be so much work, and that also that like it probably wouldn't be that strong, because any pipe that I can like bend by hand into this shape will also like bend when you sit in the chair. So I went to wood for the sides of it, which I actually really like, and I just like rounded the corners so it looks like it's like a more finished piece of furniture. And so yeah, I did some renderings of it. And so I started, I laser cut like a template for these. I made it so that all the curves are the same curve, so I just had to make 3 copies of the same thing. And in the ITLL they have a pipe bender, and so I just like went by hand and like made it into this shape. And so then for the sides, I wanted them to like go through each other, so I used like the table saw and carved out this. And so this is like how I saw it do it online. And then I like broke all these sections and then like used a mill to make it flat. And so this was the most obnoxious part, was drilling these holes at a 60-degree angle into these into the 2x4s. I made this jig to like, it was at a 60-degree angle and then at a 30-degree angle like the other way. And so people in the machine shop were like, what are you doing? So I had this giant like board sticking out. But it ended up really nice with like really precise holes. And so this was the frame, and then it was just a lot of weaving. And so this was like the first rope I ever started climbing with, and it's definitely like old and not climbable anymore. So this is a good use for it. And so I just like, once I found one way to like do it is just repeating it over and over again. And then once I weaved it all the way, I like started tensioning the whole thing and pulled out like a couple meters of slack off each side. And I realized that it was way bigger than I thought it would be in the CAD program, because I just like didn't put like a person in for scale. So it's like this tall, and like it's like a throne. And it ended up using 2 ropes, so, but that's kind of cool. It ended up with like this dual pattern. Yeah. And so my roommate's considering it. It works. So yeah, definitely what I learned from it is that it's hard to tell scale from in your computer. And so I was like, okay, I'll like make a little person model that's the right height and like see what it actually looks like. Also, I think I could have done it with like less windings and just like had more space between the ropes, because it's sort of overkill right now. Like they're really close together, and like it looks cool because it makes you see the form of it, but it's just a pain. And so I could probably get away with just like having more space between the ropes and then less actual like ones going across. And then the bottom tube is like, this is held at like 90 degrees, and the only thing that's holding it there is just the how it's stuck into the wood. And there's kind of a lot of tension in all of this. And so like these pipes are halfway between these angles, and so they're pulled in the right direction. But this one is getting torqued up a lot. And so, especially when I go to tension, like the ones in the middle that you actually sit on, it like really bends that tube up. So I would like change my design so that's more in line with like the force that's getting put on it. And yeah, that's it.
How are the metal tubes attached to the wood?
So they're just, the hole just goes in like most of the way in through, and they're just shoved in and press fit, and then one like little screw to hold them in.
Okay.
Yeah.
How were you able to get the tension of the ropes to make the chair not too soft or not too stiff?
I pretty much just like pulled them as tight as I could, because that was enough. And they're sort of like stretchy kind of dynamic ropes. Like when you sit in it, they're like meant to stretch anyway. And also they kind of like, when you sit in it, it like bends the tubes a little bit. So like, kind of like as tight as I could get it was how tight I wanted it. Yeah.
Were all of those renderings your renderings? Like
Yeah.
those are amazing.
Thanks.
Did you make the gradients in Photoshop?
No, they're actually, you can render like in Fusion 360 just with like you can have like a mirrored surface at the bottom, and it just like, it's actually super easy to do. Like it makes like SolidWorks rendering sucks. Yeah, and I just rendered it with like a bunch of different colored materials for the rope.
What was the computer program where you had all those wires connected?
Oh, that was Grasshopper.
Or like, what was that used for?
So that was just to model these just all of the red like ropes, are just to like see where the ropes would go. And so basically it just goes and like automates. It's like make a curve here, go to there, and then it just does it like however many times I specify to do that. And that way I could like mess with these curves and get a feel for like what it looks like and how it actually read as like a, you know, when I finally do it. And so I can make all of these and decide that like this is the one that I want to make.
Cool. Is Josie your roommate?
Oh no, she's not.
Okay.
She was just like walking by when I like was just finishing it. And it was, yeah.